My name is Charlotte. I'm 26 years old, single, and I don't have a full-time job. Since middle school, I've mostly stayed at home. I went to high school but dropped out, so I only have a middle school education. Since then, I've been living with my parents, working part-time jobs, and doing some online gigs. I have an older brother named Sawyer, who is 3 years older than me. He's the total opposite of me, good at sports, has lots of friends, and is very outgoing. He never wanted anyone to know he had a sister like me. He didn't bring friends home, and if we ran into each other at a convenience store while he was with his friends, he'd ignore me. I didn't let it bother me too much. I saw it as his problem, not mine. Once Sawyer started college and moved out, I stopped thinking about it altogether. A few years later, news came that Sawyer was getting married. He was almost 29, so it wasn't surprising. He planned to bring his fiancée to our parents' house for a visit. Since I was home that day, I decided to join them. "Dad, Mom, I'm home," Sawyer said as he arrived. When he saw me sitting with our parents, he looked confused. "Sorry to intrude," his fiancée said politely as she walked in. She didn't seem to notice his attitude at first, but when she saw me, she looked puzzled. Her eyes seemed to ask, "Who's this?" It was clear my brother hadn't told her about me. My mom quickly introduced herself and my dad. "Thank you for coming all this way. I'm Sawyer's mother, and this is his father," she said, but she didn't mention me. The fiancée, Isabella, bowed politely, still looking a bit confused. My parents had always been hard on me. They used to compare me to Sawyer, saying things like, "If your brother can do it, why can't you?" As we got older, it only got worse. They started calling me a money-sucking leech. At this meeting, it seemed like they were ignoring me entirely. When my mom stood up to get more drinks, she whispered to me, "Why are you here? Go back to your room." I had joined because I wanted to connect with my family in my own way, but it felt like a mistake. Still, I stayed. I didn't want to just leave. Isabella introduced herself. She was 26, the same age as me, but she was beautiful and graceful, with an elegant air about her. I felt like I couldn't casually talk to someone like her. My brother didn't seem happy that I was there. He introduced Isabella to our parents, but didn't say a word to me. I felt invisible. Once the conversation about the wedding ended, the group started talking casually. Sawyer still acted like I wasn't there. Then, out of the blue, he turned to me and asked, "So, Charlotte, what do you usually do?" Before I could respond to my brother's question, he interrupted. "Wait, Isabella, you don't need to talk to her," he said bluntly. Isabella looked surprised. "That's right, don't worry about it," my mother added quickly. "Yeah, don't worry about it. She's just a stranger who happens to be related by blood," my father said. Those words hit me hard. A stranger? I thought. It was like something inside me just broke. That's when I realized reconciliation with my family was never going to happen. It had been impossible from the start. The meeting ended as if I wasn't even there. Not long after that, my brother and Isabella got married. They started building a house to live in together. Sawyer had a good job at a well-known company and was earning well. Even though he was still in his 20s, Isabella had decided to quit her job and become a stay-at-home wife. When the house was finally finished, we got an invitation to their housewarming party. It was going to be a small gathering with Isabella's relatives and some of my brother's bosses. "Oh, it's already done. Time flies so fast," my mom said nervously. "We need to prepare a housewarming gift. What should we get?" "We're family, so it doesn't need to be anything fancy," my dad replied casually as he flipped over the invitation. That's when I noticed something. Only my parents' names were on the invitation. Mine wasn't there. My mom seemed to notice, too, and asked, "Charlotte is coming too, right?" I was confused. Why did she care if I went? After all, at the previous meeting, they had treated me so horribly. "It's fine if I'm not invited," I said, declining. But my mom insisted. "No, you're coming. I'll make arrangements." In the end, I agreed to go. The day of the party came, and it suddenly started raining. My parents and I took a taxi to my brother's house. When we arrived, Sawyer and Isabella didn't come out to greet us because of the rain. Instead, they waited at the entrance. As soon as the taxi stopped, my mom turned to me and said, "You pay for the taxi," then hurried out of the car with my dad. Without umbrellas, they rushed toward the entrance, leaving me behind. Ah, so that's why, I thought. Our house was far from Sawyer's, and taking a taxi was expensive. I was the one stuck paying for it. After paying the driver, I ran through the rain toward the entrance, soaked and out of breath. I was met by Isabella, who looked at me curiously. "Who are you?" she asked. I had only met Isabella once before, so I thought maybe she didn't remember me. I introduced myself politely. "I'm Charlotte, Sawyer's sister." But she just smiled and said, "Ah, the high school dropout, right? The parasite living off her parents?" She said it casually, still smiling, like it was no big deal. My brother, who had just come back from greeting other guests, walked over and saw me. He frowned. "Huh? Why are you here?" "Hey, Isabella, I told you not to invite her. Why is she here?" "Well, I don't know either," Isabella replied, clearly siding with him. It was obvious my brother hadn't wanted me there, and Isabella's attitude only got worse now that she knew who I was. In fact, she was even crueler than my brother and parents. "Would it have been better if I didn't come?" I asked quietly. "Yeah," my brother replied coldly. "You're basically a stranger, with your low education. You don't even count as a real person. Not finishing high school isn't an education at all. Could you please leave the property quickly?" Isabella added, still calm but with a terrifying look in her eyes. I felt completely humiliated. "Understood," I said, turning to leave. The taxi we had taken earlier was gone, and since we weren't on a main street, finding another one was going to be difficult. Without an umbrella, I started walking in the rain, getting drenched as I went. Behind me, I could hear Isabella laughing. By the time I got home, I was soaked. My parents came back later, looking like they had enjoyed the party. "Why did you leave suddenly? You couldn't even call a taxi to come back? You're so useless," my mother scolded, as if it was all my fault. "Sorry, I had a sudden stomachache," I lied, trying to avoid more criticism. "For something like that, you left on your own?" my father said, shaking his head. "You're hopeless. Make sure to give the gift later. You're an adult, aren't you?" I realized I still had the gift I'd prepared for the party. I hadn't given it to them. I thought about sending it by mail, but I didn't know their address. I could have asked my parents, but it felt too awkward, so I decided to contact my brother directly. "I want to send a gift. Can you tell me your address?" I texted him. His reply came quickly. "I don't give my address to strangers." I sighed. Do they really enjoy holding power over me, even in private? I thought. It wasn't enough that they were embarrassed to introduce me to others, they had to mock me like this too. I couldn't help but wonder if it was just my brother sending those messages or if Isabella was helping, typing and laughing along. Either way, it was ridiculous. I gave up on sending the housewarming gift. It was clear I had no place in their lives, and trying to build a connection was pointless. That's when I decided to leave home. I realized I couldn't get along with my family anymore, so I chose to live on my own. I didn't have a full-time job, but I had some savings from my part-time work. It was enough to rent a small place. Since I needed to make more money, I decided to try streaming videos online. I'd always been interested in streams as a hobby and was good at spotting trends that made streamers popular. When I started streaming myself, I quickly began earning tens of thousands a month. The money covered my living expenses, and I had extra to save. I invested the extra money, and the investments paid off. Eventually, I even started a small business importing and selling goods. My days became busy but fulfilling. Most importantly, I didn't have anyone around to criticize me for using my computer all day. A few months later, my parents called me out of the blue. "We need you to help Sawyer financially," they said. "Why?" I asked, genuinely surprised. How could the brother who had just built a new house need my help? They hesitated, then explained. After moving into his new house, my brother started hosting frequent parties. He invited bosses, executives, clients, and Isabella's acquaintances. At one of these parties, someone proposed an investment opportunity. My brother trusted the person and put in a large sum of money, lured by promises of big returns in just a few months. But it didn't work out, and he lost the money. I couldn't believe it. Sawyer had a good job and a stable income. If he had just kept working hard, he wouldn't have gotten into this mess. "Who recommended this investment? Isn't it a scam?" I asked. "No, it's not a scam. It was one of Isabella's acquaintances," they replied, sounding like they still trusted her completely. "How much do you need?" I asked cautiously. When they told me the amount, I was shocked. It was far more than a regular employee could pay back easily. "Is that all for Sawyer, or is there more to it?" I asked hesitantly. They paused. then admitted the truth I feared: they had also put money into the same investment. I sighed deeply. I can't come up with that much money so easily. Sorry, I said, preparing to hang up. But they didn't let me go. We're your real family. You're supposed to help us in times like these, they pleaded. Real family? I thought bitterly. That's too little, too late. Sorry, but I'm busy, and I'm a stranger to you, right? I said before hanging up the phone. Later, however, they somehow found out about my company and showed up at my office. It happened during a business meeting. My secretary entered the room, looking concerned. President, there are guests here for you. I don't have any other appointments. Who are they? They claim to be your family, ma'am. I froze, dreading what was coming. Apologizing to my business partner, I excused myself and headed to the reception area. There they were, my pregnant sister-in-law Isabella, my brother, and my parents. You're running a company now, huh? Well, it's much smaller than where I work, my brother said with a smirk, glancing around as if to judge the place. I decided to play dumb. Who are you? I asked. What's with that attitude? My brother shouted, clearly losing his temper. My mother stepped forward and tried to explain. We've talked about this before. We need your support. You're running a company, so you can help us out now, right? She shamelessly asked for money, acting like it was my responsibility to fix their problems. Yeah, my father added. It's an important time for our family. Isabella is about to give birth, and we need a good doctor since the baby's growth isn't normal. Please, Charlotte. They spoke as if I owed them, like I was obligated to pay off their debts. Employees walked by, glancing at the scene nervously. Annoyed, I said firmly, please leave, you're causing a disturbance. My brother exploded with anger. We're a disturbance? We came all the way here, and that's how you talk to your family? He yelled, drawing even more attention from the staff passing by. Then, in an attempt to humiliate me, he said, do you all know this girl dropped out of middle school? She was a shut-in, a real NET. To his surprise, the employees didn't react as he expected. We know. Everyone here knows the president's background, one of them said calmly. She's helped many people with similar situations to hers. Is that a problem? My brother was visibly thrown off, stammering, My father stepped in, scoffing, what a pathetic company, just a gathering of neets. My brother followed, raising his voice. Exactly, companies that deal with a place like this can't be any good either. At that moment, the president of the company I had been meeting with walked out of the reception room. He must have overheard the commotion. As soon as my brother saw him, his face went pale. He lowered his gaze, looking panicked. What's wrong, Sawyer? Isabella asked him. Idiot, don't say my name, my brother whispered sharply, but it was too late. Sawyer? Sawyer? Oh, it is you, the visiting company president said, walking directly toward my brother. You're the guy who always fumbles, Mr. Long, the division manager, right? We owe a lot to your company. The blood drained from my brother's face. The president was from one of my brother's company's major clients. My brother stuttered, unable to form a coherent sentence. Not a decent company, huh? The president said, throwing my brother's own words back at him with a sharp edge. My brother froze, his jaw slack. My parents, my brother, and Isabella all fell silent, realizing the trouble they were in. I turned to the company president, apologizing again. I'm sorry for taking up your time. I'll ask them to leave. Oh, are you sure? I don't mind waiting if you need to talk with your family, he said kindly. They're not my family, I replied coldly, glancing at my brother, parents, and Isabella. They're complete strangers. After that, they were escorted out of the office. They left quietly, likely too stunned by the president's involvement to cause more trouble. Curious about how they found out about my company, I investigated. It turned out Isabella was the reason. She had a friend who was always looking into financial news and investment trends. That friend discovered me in the media, a young entrepreneur and trader making waves in business. Isabella was shocked to see that I, the middle school dropout she ridiculed, had become successful. She told my brother and parents about me, suggesting they ask for money. When I didn't respond to their calls or messages, they decided to show up at my company. I wanted to cut all ties, but I couldn't help but look into Isabella. That's when I learned something shocking. Her friend was actually her ex-boyfriend, and the child she was carrying wasn't my brother's, it was her ex's. My brother was devastated when he found out. To make matters worse, Isabella and her ex had been running scams together, stealing money from multiple men. My brother was just another victim. Eventually, Isabella and her ex-boyfriend were arrested, but the money they took was gone for good. Things only got worse for my former family. After the incident at my company, my brother's reputation at work plummeted. He was transferred to a dead-end position, and eventually, he resigned. My father also faced trouble at his job. He lost his temper with a subcontractor in front of his company president. After an investigation, they discovered he had a habit of belittling people with lower education levels, just as he used to do to me. He was fired too. Both my brother and father ended up unemployed, and their income disappeared. Now, they constantly try to contact me, begging me to let them live with me. Of course, I refuse. I even had them banned from entering my company building to prevent any further disturbances. "We're still family, right?" they plead. But my response is always the same: I don't know you. You're complete strangers to me. And that's how it will stay. I have no intention of ever changing my answer.